By employing the hundreds of little tricks and techniques, a person with Parkinson's learns to mask his or her condition for as long as possible.
Steve Perry, the legendary singer who contributed to many of Journey's biggest songs, has spoken publicly about his decision to leave the band. When this happened, Perry was riding high on the success of his albums and concerts with Journey. Fans were surprised and intrigued when Perry quit Journey in the late 90s. Perry has now confirmed the long-rumored reason for his departure. He was dealing with the health risks associated with celebrity behind the scenes. He was exhausted from the never-ending touring, long recording sessions, and pressures of leading a professional rock band. Music and the industry no longer captivated him. He began to have a sense of disconnection and exhaustion. The enthusiasm and delight he felt for performing seemed to be dwindling, and he didn't want to risk losing it all if he wasn't fully committed. After enduring physical discomfort, mental weariness, and a longing for a life away from the limelight, Perry made the difficult decision to permanently depart from Journey. However, did he feel any remorse? How did he rediscover the joy of making music and sharing it with the world? How about we explore the untold Steve Perry story? Early life and career. Born in Hanford, California, Stephen Ray Perry is better known by his stage name, Steve Perry. His musical career stands in stark contrast to his rural upbringing, which he entered this world in. Portuguese culture has always been an integral part of Perry's family tree. The Azores, a Portuguese archipelago, were his parents' homeland. A large part of his distinctive heritage and later sense of self came from his childhood, which included this Portuguese influence. Perry's formative years were shaped in large part by his family life. Raymond Perry, whose given name was Raymond Pereira, was a singer and a partner in the family radio station, KNGS. At an early age, Perry was introduced to music through this milieu. There was more than simply ambient music playing in his home. It was fundamental to his existence. Perry had an early and close knowledge of the music business thanks to his father's participation in the industry, even though it was on a local level. The relationship between Perry's parents terminated when he was 8 years old. There was a dramatic change in his life after this split. Perry and his mom moved to his grandparents' dairy farm after the divorce. This relocation was about more than simply changing residences. Compared to the early impacts of his father's radio station, it signified a shift to a less glitzy and more rustic existence. It was a world apart from Perry's childhood when he lived on the dairy farm with his grandparents. He had been used to city life before, but the farm's rural setting was a complete change of pace. Despite the difficulties, this time in his life was formative for his work ethic and character. Perry owes much of his tenacity and drive to the grit and simplicity of farm life, which he inherited from his parents. Something monumental happened on Steve Perry's 12th birthday that would shape his life and profession forever. An eighth-note pendant in gold was a present from his mother, Mary Quaresma. For Perry, this pendant became more than simply an accessory. It became a representation of his aspirations and prosperity. He thought it would bring him good fortune and help him achieve his musical goals, so he wore it often, more than just a mark of her love. His mother's present had a deeper meaning. Perry felt a deep connection to the gesture because of his love for music. As Perry's dedication to his musical dreams became stronger, the eighth-note pendant became a personal symbol. Throughout his career, he wore this little piece of jewelry as a sign of his beginnings and his unbreakable bond to the music that moved him. Perry had a turning point in his musical career at the same age, 12. The timeless tune Cupid by Sam Cooke was blasting on the radio as he rode in his mom's automobile. The immediate and powerful effect was imparted by this song. Perry was very moved by Cooke's expressive vocals and the heartfelt nature of Cupid, which ignited a strong ambition to start a singing career. Hearing this song was a turning point in Perry's life that ultimately led him to pursue a music career. Career in music moving to Sacramento, California. In his early 20s, Steve Perry took a daring step toward his musical dreams. He did this because he wanted to start a band and make it big in the cutthroat music industry. Perry established his first band in Sacramento, which went by the moniker Ice. Scott Matthews, a musical prodigy at the age of 16 who went on to become a respected producer, was a part of this early musical endeavor. In addition to singing, playing guitar and drums. Matthews was an integral part of the Ice Band. The development of Ice was a watershed moment in Perry's early professional life. In 1972, the band established its Los Angeles base of operations at the Record Plant Studios. During that time, this famous studio was the center of all things creative. The legendary album Talking Book was recorded by Stevie Wonder during the night shifts at the studio. The dynamic and competitive character of the music industry at that period is emphasized by the contrast between Wonder's nighttime recordings and Perry and Matthews' daily labor. Even though it got off to a good start, Ice had a lot of problems. The band's recordings were created in a prestigious studio, but nobody listened to them. They were unable to attract a wider audience due, in large part, to ineffective administration and marketing. There were practical considerations and limitations to the band's capacity to devote themselves entirely to their music career because Scott Matthews was still a high school student. Ultimately, these reasons caused Ice to break up, and Perry went back to Sacramento discouraged but determined. To pursue his music career further, Perry relocated to Thousand Oaks, California in 1975. His progressive rock band, Pieces, was created in Thousand Oaks. The band's attempts to get a record deal were unsuccessful. The band's inability to secure a recording deal was a major setback as it prevented them from obtaining the publicity and funding they needed to succeed. Another low point in Perry's early career came when Pieces broke up following an unsuccessful attempt to break into the business that lasted for around 18 months. Perry was profoundly impacted by this tragic occurrence, which caused him to doubt his ability to continue making songs. Because of the devastating emotional toll that Michael's death took on Perry, he almost gave up on his ambitions to pursue a music career. Upon returning to Lemoore, California, Perry considered quitting the music profession completely in the aftermath of this tragedy. During that time, I went through a lot of internal turmoil and uncertainty, but his mother was the one who pushed him to follow his dreams. Having her back at this turning point in Perry's life was essential. Thanks to this miscommunication and the absence of a formal management contract, a position became available for a new lead vocalist. After seeing Perry's acting aptitude, Herbert decided to pursue him for the part. Herbert phoned Perry, and he answered the call even though he wasn't sure he wanted to keep performing music. To keep things under wraps and not annoy Fleischman, Perry was presented to the band as the Portuguese cousin of one of the roadies. Perry was able to blend in with the band's vibe using this strategy, which kept him out of trouble. Perry was offered the chance to perform with Journey at a sound check in Long Beach. There was a tipping point with this unannounced performance. During this session, Perry's skill and the band's flair were demonstrated. His powerful singing voice and magnetic stage presence left an impression on the Journey members. Herbert quickly decided to announce Perry's replacement as lead vocalist to the band following this performance. The shift into Journey was a watershed moment in Perry's career. When he was recruited to be the main vocalist of the band, it was more than simply a lineup change. It was a watershed event that would prepare Journey to become one of the most popular rock bands of the 1970s and 1980s. The band reimagined its sound with Perry's imposing vocals and captivating stage presence, which paved the way for their subsequent success. Steve Perry debuted publicly with Journey in San Francisco on October 28, 1977. The original progressive rock style of Journey was well known and loved by their fan base. Thus, their reception to his debut was divided. While Perry's vocals were forceful and unique, they also signaled a major change in the band's sound, moving them closer to radio-friendly melodic rock. Nevertheless, Perry's personality and brilliance swiftly won over new admirers. Despite the early doubters, a watershed moment for Perry and Journey Infinity came with the publication of 1978's album. Perry co-wrote the smash song Lights, which was included on it. It quickly became a fan favorite and established a trademark of Journey's sound. After falling in love with San Francisco as a member of Journey, Perry wrote Lights on his experiences there. The band's more polished, commercially attractive sound, together with Perry's soulful vocals, catapulted them into even greater popular success. Departure and Dream. After Dream were the two albums that Journey released in 1980. Anyway, You Want It One of the band's defining songs and a mainstay of their live performances was one of the many successes on Departure. As the original score for the eponymous Japanese film, Dream After Dream was an innovative undertaking. The album showcased the band's flexibility and Perry's vocal adaptability to diverse musical circumstances, even if it was a departure from their regular sound. Captured, a live CD that Journey published that same year, captured the band's dynamic and energetic performances. The record did well in the charts and solidified Perry's position as the band's signature vocalist. The 1981 publication of Escape marked the zenith of Journey's career. The album sold more than 9 million copies in the United States alone and peaked at #1 on the Billboard 200. It was a tremendous commercial success. Some of Journey's most famous songs were featured on Escape, such as the cultural anthem Don't Stop Believin' and the power ballad Open Arms, which became the band's highest charting single and peaked at #2 on the Billboard Hot 100. One of the defining 80s ballads, Open Arms was made possible in large part by Perry's passionate vocal delivery. After the economic success of Escape, Journey released Frontiers in 1983, which was another commercial triumph. The album featured singles such as Faithfully, Worlds Apart, and Separate Ways. Both singles cemented Perry's place as a leading rock vocalist of the day and became radio mainstays. After becoming one of rock's most recognizable voices with Journey, Steve Perry chose to go solo in 1984. Independent work experience. This was a watershed event for Perry and his fans since it gave him the freedom to explore his own identity outside of Journey. Street Talk, his first solo effort, was both critically acclaimed and commercially successful. Perry had a strong emotional connection to his musical heritage, and the name of his album, Street Talk, was a play on his previous band's name, Alien Project. Columbia Records released the album, and it was an immediate hit with fans since it included Perry's distinctive singing style in a somewhat different way than his work with Journey. Street Talk cemented Perry's profile as a powerful solo performer and earned multi-platinum status with over 2 million copies sold in the United States. Oh Sherry, the album's lead single, is still one of Perry's most famous songs, a mainstay of 80s rock. The song, written for his then-girlfriend Sherry Swafford, reached #3 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song's emotional intensity and Perry's passionate performance struck a chord with listeners. Oh! Sherry's music video was also a huge hit, playing on MTV all the time. The success of the music video increased the song's exposure and paved the way for Perry to launch her solo career. Along with Oh Sherry, other popular songs from Street Talk included Foolish Heart, which reached #18 on the Billboard Hot 100. With Foolish Heart, Perry further cemented his standing as a multi-talented singer by demonstrating his capacity to portray vulnerability and emotion. Strung Out and She's Mine, two of the album's songs, showcased Perry's pop tastes mingling with her rock sensibilities. The polished and energetic sound of Street Talk is the result of the collaboration of a gifted collection of musicians. Craig Krampf, who had previously played drums for Alien Project, contributed to many tunes, bringing Perry full circle. The album's sound was also influenced by guitarist Michael Landau and bassist Randy Jackson, who would go on to become a well-known American Idol judge. Street Talk was a groundbreaking album in the mid-80s because of their work and Perry's unique singing and composition. At this time, Perry was exploring musical territory beyond that of his solo work. On the 1985 USA for Africa All-Star charity song, We Are the World, he was one of 21 vocalists, joining an ensemble of music greats. Written by Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie, the song went viral throughout the world and helped generate a ton of money for African famine relief. Perry's involvement in the initiative demonstrated his dedication to charity causes and his standing in the music business. If Only for the Moment Girl is Perry's solo effort on the album We Are the World. In a subsequent reissue of Street Talk, this song was added as a bonus track. Perry tried her hand at a new kind of musical cooperation in 1987. Producing the album Sirius for the Irish folk rock band Clannad. This surprising collaboration showcased Perry's adaptability and exploratory nature as a musician. Perry was presented with a one-of-a-kind creative opportunity by Clannad, a band renowned for their otherworldly sound that fuses traditional Irish music with rock. He demonstrated his versatility as an artist by experimenting with a more ambient and textured sound with Clannad. Steve Perry had a tough time of it in the mid-1980s when he was getting back together with Journey. The band's Raised on Radio album was being recorded when Perry's mom, Mary Quaresma, became very sick. Steve Perry then decided to leave Journey. What made him decide to do so? Let's find out. Why Steve Perry left Journey. Perry, who had a special bond with his mother, struggled to balance his roles as Journey's producer and lead singer with his desire to be there for her in her last days. Both he and the band suffered emotionally from his inability to balance work and personal responsibilities. Raised on Radio was Perry's first foray into producing an album for Journey, and he was also performing lead vocals. Since he had to return to the San Joaquin Valley so often to visit and care for his mother, productivity was sluggish and challenging. For the remainder of the band, these continual disruptions meant an unpredictable and aggravating recording session. Since of Perry's absence, Journey was tense since there were sporadic sessions, uneven development, and a general lack of unity. As his mother's health declined, Perry felt intense personal sorrow. Her untimely death broke his heart as he was working on Raised on Radio. Both Perry's mental health and the album were profoundly affected by her passing. An album with a sound of its own made more distinctive by the stressful conditions of recording. Compared to Journey's prior albums, Raised on Radio skewed more toward pop rock and adult contemporary, yet it still had some classic rock elements. Despite everything, Raised on Radio managed to release a string of hit songs, such as Girl Can't Help It, Be Good to Yourself, and I'll Be All Right Without You, which did well on the charts. There was a noticeable strain on the development of the record, despite its monetary success. As a result of his anguish, Perry was not giving his all to the project, and tensions within the band were rising. At this time, Perry's connection with Journey took a significant change. After the 1987 Raised on Radio tour ended, Perry decided to take a break from Journey due to the emotional toll of his mother's sickness and the band disputes that ensued. The band and its fans were devastated by his departure, but Perry needed space to recover and reevaluate his life's objectives. Perry decided to retire from music altogether in the late 1980s after taking some time away from the limelight to contemplate his life and career. But he was still one of the most recognizable voices in rock, and his impact was felt throughout the business. The great highs and profound personal problems that Perry overcame during his journey demonstrated his perseverance and commitment to his craft, and his legacy will live on in the music industry. Steve Perry discussed the emotional and professional factors that led to his 1987 resignation from Journey in an interview with AXS-TV, reflecting openly on the choice. Steve A.P. In an interview, Perry said that he had lost interest in his music career. The passion and authenticity that had previously characterized his singing career had faded. Along with the increasing demands of fame and the hard life of a rock star, this lack of enthusiasm prompted him to seek strategies to cope. As a means of numbing himself from his feelings of dissatisfaction, Perry acknowledged engaging in party activities such as drug usage and drinking, but these actions did nothing to reawaken his love of music. On the contrary, they made him feel even more unhappy and exhausted. As with other parts of his life, Perry's voice, which had been vital to Journey's success, was starting to deteriorate. There was an overwhelming sense that his present course of action was not going to provide any fruitful results. The necessity to distance himself finally dawned on him. Despite his lack of direction over what should be done next, the only thing he knew was that he couldn't keep going in the same direction. While Perry was gone from the music industry, he found comfort in reconnecting with old acquaintances and hobbies. His birthplace, Hanford, was only 18 miles from the place he got his Harley-Davidson, so he started riding it around the Central Valley of California. Especially when he went back home, he found solace in these rides, which served as a kind of therapy that let him recall simpler pleasures he had lost amid his music career's mayhem. Summers in the Central Valley may reach well over 110 degrees, and one of Perry's enduring recollections is of riding through alfalfa fields in that scorching heat. As he walked across the fields, the refreshing air brought back fond memories of his youth. There was more than meets the eye for Perry on these rides. They helped him go back to reality and rediscover the simpler, more tranquil parts of life that he had forgotten about in the frenzy of stardom. To help him cope with his loss and look back on his life's path, Perry visited the graves of his mother and other relatives who had passed away, in addition to getting back in touch with the physical landscape of his past. Going there helped him face the grief he had carried around for a long time after his mother's death. Steve Perry, the legendary singer of Journey, suffered a deep crisis related to music after leaving his music career. During the long period of emotional separation from music, Perry suffered from a type of post-traumatic stress disorder, which caused him to feel extremely painful when exposed to music. This is an extremely serious condition for someone for whom music has occupied a large part of his life and career. Perry could not bear to listen to music, which created terrible pain that he could not control. This was not only a great shock to Perry himself, but also to fans who had become accustomed to his constant presence in the music industry. Perry's inability to bear music, despite it having been with him for many years, was a clear sign of the deep stress and emotional damage he had experienced. Perry has been open about his decision to take a complete break from music, sharing that he had become disillusioned with his love for it and felt that the passion was gone. He even felt that going back to the past was unnecessary, as he had achieved his lifelong goal of becoming a famous artist. Perry's departure from music was not only a personal decision, but also a major turning point in his career, marking the end of an important chapter in the life of one of the greatest vocalists in rock history. Perry's decision to completely step away from music has left many fans and colleagues confused and concerned. However, it is also a testament to Perry's depth and sincerity in his relationship with music. The decision, while painful, reflects Perry's courage and self-awareness in the face of his emotions and challenges. But fate had other surprises in store when Steve Perry met Patty Jenkins, the filmmaker best known for her work on Monster. Their meeting began when Jenkins, seeking permission to use Journey's iconic song Don't Stop Believin' in her film, contacted Perry's attorney. Although Perry had retired from his music career and no longer wanted anything to do with it, the interaction opened up a new and unexpected opportunity in his life. While working to get the song approved, Perry and Jenkins developed a friendship that was not just based on work, but grew into a genuine friendship. Jenkins, with her enthusiasm and passion, invited Perry to watch another of her works in a Lifetime special called 5, which focused on cancer survivors. Although Perry had distanced himself from music and the work associated with it, he decided to embark on this adventure because of his close relationship with Jenkins. When Perry watched 5, a particular scene on the hospital rooftop left a deep impression on him. In the scene, Perry saw a woman struggling with cancer, and the scene powerfully touched his heart and soul. The sensitivity and emotion in the scene stirred up deep thoughts and feelings in Perry, making him realize things he had never felt before. Not only did this scene affect Perry emotionally, but it also brought him face to face with feelings and experiences he had tried to avoid for years. His new connection with Patty Jenkins and her work opened up an opportunity for Perry to rediscover parts of himself that he had abandoned, and to relive emotions that he had suppressed. This encounter, not only a professional collaboration but also a life-changing experience, helped Perry reconnect with music and art in ways he never imagined. Jenkins told him that the woman was Kelly Nash, a PhD psychologist who was doing well after overcoming cancer. Perry asked Jenkins if she had Kelly's email, even though it was completely out of character for him. Jenkins was taken aback and wanted to know why, because he knew Perry was usually quiet. Steve Perry simply said that he couldn't help but notice Kelly, a woman with whom he felt a special connection from the start. Although the wait for Kelly's response lasted for 2 weeks, Perry was patient and calm, constantly thinking about the opportunity to meet her. When they finally met, everything changed magically. They became inseparable after attending a dinner together, and the connection between them seemed so strong and natural that it was inexplicable. Perry described their relationship as something that had existed before, a deep and familiar feeling that he had never experienced before. This relationship brought him a sense of warmth and comfort that he had been searching for all this time. However, their happiness did not last forever. After a year and a half together, Kelly's illness returned and quickly took her life. Kelly's death was a shock and a deep pain for Perry. The short time they had together ended cruelly, leaving Perry with the same mental and physical loneliness he had experienced before meeting Kelly. Kelly's death was not only a great loss in Perry's life, but also a great emotional challenge. Her passing left a huge void in his heart and soul, leaving Perry feeling lonely and hurt. Despite the short, meaningful time they had spent together and the deep connection they had, he still had to deal with the pain and loss she left behind after she left this world. After he'd been alone for a long time, Kelly broke him out of his shell and showed him a side of life he'd been missing. He felt loved and accepted, and gave his life a new direction as a result of their connection. Throughout one of their passionate late-night talks, Kelly begged Perry to swear to her. Steve must assure her that she will not return to seclusion if her sickness recurs. Otherwise, all their efforts will have been in vain. Perry gave this suggestion a lot of thought. Kelly's pleading extended beyond her personal life and their romantic connection. Making sure her fight and their love meant something had to be the main focus. After she passed away, Perry let that vow serve as a compass, to pay tribute to her memory. He kept his word and returned to music with the album Traces. Inspired by the love, grief, and optimism that Kelly had bestowed upon him, the record signified his return to music after nearly 25 years. Returning to music was more than simply keeping his word to Kelly for Perry. Keeping the healing process going was another important aspect. Leaving behind a life of dread and seclusion that he had endured for so long demanded bravery and will. Kelly's statements served as a continual caution that turning back into seclusion would constitute a denial of all that she had bestowed upon him. Therefore, Perry decided to go forward despite the sadness and the hardship of going back to a world that had hurt him so deeply. He discovered a new sense of purpose and channeled his grief into art. Both Steve Perry's contemporaries in the music industry and major media outlets have lauded his singing voice. Perry became a vocal icon with Journey and Beyond because of his strong and emotional tenor voice. Rock artist John Bon Jovi bestowed the nickname The Voice onto him, and he took it to heart due to his extraordinary vocal range, silky voice, and capacity to evoke profound emotions in his performances. Not only did Perry reunite with the band he helped build, but he also returned to the public spotlight during that event, making it all the more noteworthy. Many still laud Perry for her singing abilities. He was named number 30 on Billboard's list of the 50 greatest lead vocalists of all time for rock bands in August 2023. His lasting influence on the music business is further demonstrated by this honor, which further establishes his status as one of the greats. Interestingly, 67% of readers in a separate Billboard survey voted for Steve Perry as the best rock vocalist of all time. Fans' profound connection and enduring appreciation for Perry's voice in music are evident in this triumph. Like, subscribe, and click the next video button on your screen if you liked this one.